Okay. Hello, everyone. Today it's just me myself here, right, in a very small room, just to get a bit of peace and quiet, right, for the presentation, right. But online, I've got also my colleague Peter Popper, who I'd like to introduce. He's our business developer, recently joined us, right. So thank you for having us, right. So it's for us in Gauss, we've been always very keen, to share knowledge as part of what we do. So it's a very strong part of what we do. And we heard a lot about you guys, right? Because you've been doing really well. By the way, congratulations to the 10th place, I believe, in Deloitte Fast 50, right? So well done. It's an absolutely great achievement, and yeah, hopefully we'll see some interesting places, some synergies in the near future where we can go together to customers and tackle hard problems, right? So the first thing I'd like to do is introduce us, introduce our philosophy and why we exist and why we're on the market, right? And that's why the title of the presentation is a sort of a formula which shows people what really the AI consists of, what are the key elements, right? So it's kind of software, you need the data, and you need also the people, right? So currently it's all these three elements which combine a successful AI project, right? So welcome to this presentation. So we're Gauss Algorithmic. Let's see if it switches, right? So we've been on the market since 2013, right? And really our mission is to help companies really uncover the wealth of data that sometimes they even themselves don't know really too much about, right? And the whole idea is to take them forward, help them grow. That's kind of why we have that image of the rocket in the picture, which is actually a funny story because I gave a design team the idea of the rocket, right? An external design team. So they came up with this rocket, but actually that was the Challenger, which actually blew up like 7 seconds after the launch. So um, design fail, okay, but things happen, right? So so this is who we are, and we've been more or less doing this since 2017. We actually started in financial markets. Someone actually thought it was a good idea to predict financial markets because this new stuff, machine learning, was emerging, and hey, let's predict where commodities are going. And there were two guys here who were working really hard on it, and long story short, it absolutely failed. So we had to do something about it, and we started to talk to customers who were currently on that big data wave, and that's how we got more or less into the business, right? So we've been fortunate enough ourselves, here and there, someone has thought about us, so there has been a bit of recognition in the space, right? So we've been in the as finalists in certain accelerators. We won certain awards, innovation company. In terms of the Czech Republic, a certain CFO club has rewarded us for the project of the largest potential. In Switzerland, we were in the sixth company Fintech batch. So throughout the time, we've collected some recognition. I'm really proud about that. But it's really not, there's a lot of pictures of me, right? But it's really not really down to me, right? We have I think a great work environment, great team, which is behind this. So I just wanted to show you kind of some historical images, us at conferences, us doing our stuff, right? Unfortunately, we just similar to you guys, I believe, we just moved offices like a few months ago, and there wasn't really too much time to get pictures of the working environment. But I would say it's not really too flashy at the end of the day. But the really strong thing about our team is we probably spend, I would say, more time than we actually should together. There's kind of a very strong sports culture, which actually forces us to be together a bit more than we should, right? So there's a lot of togetherness, and we spend really a lot. We don't do team building, so because we have so many weekends where we are kind of together and do stuff together, right? And these are people who coming out of really strong backgrounds, right? Companies like Red Hat, research in CERN, a couple of guys got PhDs from various all the way from physics to actually new subjects like artificial intelligence, right? But this is what I really like about the team, right? So this is us in a picture, and yeah, we've been fortunate enough to have worked with some really interesting brands in the past years, right? So most, as you can probably see, we've been most established, let's say, in the banking / fintech space and in telecommunications. But in recent years, we're now touching, let's say, different areas, right? Like, we're probably getting like 10 times more SaaS companies, coming to us, looking for advice, looking for help to implement for us, some AI technologies, features, better process data, and so on, right? Companies from Switzerland, France, Austria, Slovakia, right? So it's kind of these people have trusted us with the team. And so the real question is actually, what do we do, right, at the end of the day? So it's really simple, right? So we have a really good skill set in the fields of artificial intelligence. I'm going to explain kind of what that is really a couple of slides later. But in terms of business, what we do is that we predominantly provide professional services, right? So we're not really a product company. We have some things which we reuse, which is in the kind of the models and API section. So in certain cases, we've managed to acquire, let's say, a really large data set, right, which we can kind of put into a model, reuse for various different use cases, right? So we do that here and there, and or we have a model or a framework that is reusable, so we tend to really package it. And what this helps us with is that we come to a customer and we can actually deliver a lot faster, right, than probably a lot of our competitors, right? So if you want to, we can speak also maybe a bit more technologically, right? So we put everything into containers, right? So we use Docker a lot, and our platforms are really, Kubernetes, OpenShift, and these kind of places, right? So, and customers already have these, in places. So it's then really easy for us to come and say, hey, we got a quick solution to your problem. Here it is. Give it a try. Let's tune it into your environment and so on. So that helps us quite a lot. And sometimes we get customers, where we have, a business case but kind of, they don't have that core infrastructure to actually provide the appropriate experience for the customers or for their customers, right? So sometimes you need to do things a bit faster, or maybe even in real time, right? So then these guys don't have that infrastructure, and we say, hey, we can help you kind of build out the basics, right? So usually we start really small, and then we help the customer to scale out, right? So very recently, and I'll go into detail of that use case as well, we even move customers entirely to the cloud, right? So just getting rid of that physical infrastructure which someone needs to maintain, and going into a more cloud native like sort of technology, right? So this is what we do really in a nutshell, right? So these are 3 types of engagements that we do, and sometimes it's a combination of all 3. Sometimes we do just one, right? Sometimes people just call us and want a workshop, or they just want to help with their AI strategy, right? So especially companies which are corporates and belong to a larger group, right? They get, from the corporate an AI, strategy, and they want to execute that. So they want, maybe some advice on how to best do that. So this is what we do from a business perspective, and the way we do it is probably more interesting because we have kind of a unique approach, especially when it comes to delivering the value, right? So we understand very well that in order for this to work, you have to have really good experts. You have to think really from a user perspective, right? And at the same time, you have to deliver the business focus, right? So these are three things which we strongly put into or the way we do things into our process with the customers. And usually it's not like we're perfect or anything, right? But usually when one of these elements has been missing in the past, right, it was more difficult to do that project, right? So these are things which we kind of keep in mind when we do things, right? And you don't have to read it through. Once you get the recording, right, you can go through the details. I just took it from another slide, but I really like to show this quite a lot. So this is us, right, as a company. So we try to help other companies try to implement AI, and I was told you guys are very technically gifted, right? But I wasn't too sure who would be here, so I'll try to explain the AI problem, let's say maybe from our perspective, right? Because there are various definitions of what artificial intelligence is. At the end of the day, there's a lot of buzzwords and a lot of hype around it as well, right? So it can be, I think at times, right, quite confusing, right? So where I like to start is really about the definition of intelligence, right? And I always keep this in the back of my head because this really relates to some of the work that we do, right? So intelligence really is kind of the ability for a certain system to reach a goal. Very simple as that, right? So I always like to keep it there. It's the core of the problem, right? And the smarter the intelligence, the better the ability to get to that goal, right? Potentially. So there are probably the topic, right? But there are two types of, or maybe even now they're quoting even three types of artificial intelligence, right? But typically what we're talking about in the software business is something which we're calling the artificial narrow intelligence. The other one is artificial general intelligence. And kind of the main difference is that the narrow intelligence focuses on a narrow problem. If you would quote it very quickly, the artificial general intelligence should be even capable of thinking about ways to solve those narrow problems, right? So it's like becoming a bit more complex, right? So he actually is capable of learning how to learn, if that makes sense. So, but that's pretty much, I would say, from my perspective, still far away. The AGI, the artificial general intelligence. So what we do is that artificial narrow intelligence. And I always, when I go to people of business or people of corporate, you have to have an easy way to kind of explain it. So I always like to show them kind of this picture. Machine learning AI practitioners would probably give some comments and would argue with me in certain areas, right? Probably the ALG would be somewhere maybe around here, maybe from other people's perspective. It doesn't matter too much. The key is that it somehow is interlinked, right? So the artificial intelligence is kind of an umbrella name for a lot of different methods of processing information, of learning methods, and so I'll just go through the acronyms, right? So ML is standing for machine learning, for anyone who doesn't know. DL is deep learning. It's just a difference of methods, right? Really, at the end of the day, where deep learning is using something called neural networks to perform the job. It's a bit more complex. Then you have NLU, which is natural language understanding. NLP is natural language processing, and NLG is natural language generation, right? So natural language processing is kind of a mix of linguistics and artificial intelligence. And when you mix that together, you can either understand text or you can generate text which is similar, let's say, to human talking or writing or understanding, right? So this is just a quick introduction. But in the perspective of the software or of the business that we do, I believe I found the best kind of, for me at least, the best definition here, right? I'm pretty sure that you guys know Andreessen Horowitz. They're one of the, let's say more kind of famous or kind of superstar VC people, VC companies, right? So, and they do a lot of writing up, and they've got something called the AI Playbook, which I do recommend, you guys have a look at. And really, what at the end of the day, what we do is, just software which tries to help make other software smarter, right? So it's a really simple definition, but at the end of the day, it's very true. So we're just, creating more software that's helping other software. It's as simple as that. So the ultimate question then, since we're kind of in the focus of what AI is, and what actually the customers come to us for help, and this is also a question then, also for you guys when we'll be in the cooperation, because the way we, as I said, the user-centric design is really an integral part of what we do. So it's very important for us on how we bring let's say, that technology into the real world. So, it helps us answer the question, what can I do with AI in my own product or in my company, right? So this is what we try to answer. So let's get some inspiration then. So as Nikolai said in the beginning of the presentation, we're going to be focusing a bit more on fintech, because it's currently a hot topic for both parties, and I've chosen some use cases which I personally really like, and I feel they're very interesting. Now, first is a company which is really interesting, and I really like this company. If you're an entrepreneur, I think you always have one of those companies where you say, hey, I kind of wish I did that, right? So for me, this is kind of, that company. I think Lemonade is really doing a great job. It's more of an insurtech product, right? But on the background, when you do, when you look into the details, when you do a reading of their blogs, it's really jam-packed with machine learning, with natural language processing. The product is really really heavily using that, right? So Lemonade, they do insurance for specific markets, renters, and now very recently they're doing pet health. They've done a great job. I mean, in the US they got 28% market share, in 3 years, which is really an amazing achievement. But the thing I really like is kind of their focus on the problem and how they want to bring basically these technologies to the customer. And if you look at the way they want to do it, they look really at, I presume everyone's been insured somewhere in their life, right? So they really want to do insurance as fast as possible, right? Because it's obviously a tedious task, and at the same time they want to get your claims resolved as fast as possible. And these are for them great goals, right? And right now they're claiming that they are capable of, I think, 35% of their claims they're capable of doing within 90 seconds, right? Sorry, of their 90 in 90 seconds they're capable of insuring 35% of their incoming requests, right? Which is fast, I would say, So the way they do it is actually a combination of two things. They have a virtual assistant as kind of the main interface, right? And so this is a conversational, practically chatbot where you provide information. But at the same time, they've got a risk and fraud bot on the background, which is continuously doing calculations and also feeding back the virtual assistant, right? So the customer journey of the virtual assistant is usually for a lot of customers very different, because it's getting feedback from the risk, let's say, modeling, which is happening on the background, right? So it's I would imagine it's a really complicated process, and also they use a lot of external data sources, right, to try to get information about that customer, kind of on the background, right? So they don't have to give the user a bad experience asking him too many questions, right? And if they get the information they need and they're satisfied, then they automatically would insure a customer. If the customer is then coming with a claim, they are capable of doing that claim very quickly, right? So one of the examples is that if there is a flood if you're a renter and there's a flood in the area, they kind of already have your address. They know that there's a flood there, that there's that it's affected basically your building. They're just waiting for the impulse from you, and then they are just once you say, hey, I want to claim my insurance because this happened here, then they can do that really quickly because they have all that contextual information already processed, right? So Lemonade is really interesting stuff, and what I really like here is how they handled especially the chatbot experience, because that can go wrong in all sorts of ways, right? So I'm not sure if this would be visible. It's hopefully, let's see if it's oh, come on, it's a bit slow. So with these use cases, I also want to show you guys, some of the challenges which are still there, right? So it's not really always about, okay, since these guys are doing it, let's do it as well, right? In AI, it doesn't really always work that way very well. And the reason being, right, is that especially with conversational AI, conversational chatbots, there are some long-term problems which you have to solve there, right? So I don't know how many people know what GPT-3 is. Just in short, basically, there's an organization called OpenAI. And yeah, there's one hand there. So there's an organization called OpenAI, and they've basically made a language model very simply, which is a pre-trained transformer. If we go into the details, but it's a language model which helps with stuff like auto-completion or just generating text, understanding text, and so on. And I found a really cool. Maybe it's not so visible for you guys. I'm sorry about the quality here because I actually tried to import that tweet into the presentation. But there's a guy who's trying it out, and he's starting the sentence with two Muslims, and it's saying stuff like two Muslims walked into the church and killed everyone there, right? It's saying stuff like, two Muslims walked into the mosque and one started, shooting at people. Or so what he was trying to show that it's, for this model, it's very difficult to find a sentence where there wouldn't be any violence, or where Muslims wouldn't be killing people. So it's a thing that you need to keep in mind when you're doing this sort of stuff, is that the quality of your model that you're producing to the world is only as good as your data, right? So bias is the general term that we use here, and it's a very it's a very big problem, right? And it's a problem that I think it's going to still take us quite some time to solve. Now, if you're implementing conversational AI, the narrower the problem you're solving, usually the better, right? So you can avoid this by basically narrowing down the possibilities of that kind of conversation, right? So this is what most companies do in this sense, right? But sometimes things can go, if you go public with it, things can go really wrong. And I'm pretty sure this because this is quite an old one, right? So this is the story of Tay. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but this is a chatbot created by Microsoft back in 2016, and probably the worst idea ever. They trained it and then put it on Twitter, right? And you can imagine what the Twitter trolls did to this chatbot, right? Because it was constantly updating the model based on the feedback or based on the answers of the users, right? So it took no more than 24 hours to turn this chatbot into a Nazi, and as the tweet claims, and Microsoft can take it, right? Microsoft is a big company, but imagine a bank, doing this, right? So it's a problem, right? So data is really important, and people who are actually looking after that data is also really important, right? So this is chatbots, right? So the next the next use case, which I really like, and I think it's going to be very interesting because it's I think gaining a bit of traction. And I just chose one company, but there are also European companies who are looking at this problem. This is a company called Deserve, and it's basically providing history to people, history for credit scoring. So people who initially don't have good history can still get credit, right? So imagine you just finished school and you're a student, and you could use some financing because you need a loan. Maybe you want to start something, or maybe you just want to get some money for an apartment or something like that. It's for students challenging because they're just starting the job, and there's not too many history for maybe a bank, an established bank, to make a decision, right? So on the other hand, you have all this data which is all over the place. So okay, teenagers are generating tons of data, right? So since they're 13s, right, today possibly, right? So kind of the idea is, let's use some of that information which is around here and use that to understand if that user has potential, and we can provide hidden credit, right? So this company basically uses a mix of their own and external data. They get the external data, as far as I understood, upon the consent of the user from certain either established places or maybe even applications. And then they have a machine learning model which gives them kind of a recommendation on the potential of that user, right? So they also look at the problem historically. So once they start, even themselves gaining traction, so they see, okay, when we gave it to this sort of person, right, it was okay, and this person is similar to this person, so it increases the score, right? So it's an interesting problem. I think there's a company in Germany called Creditech that are doing let's say more or less the same. These guys are doing it through different user experience, maybe from them. So they're doing it through an app and a credit card, where you have the actual card, and that's how they get their own data, right? Now, this looks like super simple, but at the end of the day, the challenge in financial services is obviously regulation, right? So when you start getting data outside of the bank or outside of that organization, you face a lot of challenges, right? So, for example, if you want to maybe insure someone, and everyone says, okay, I'll give him life insurance, or I give him a better premium on life insurance because he's active, or he's a healthy person and has an active lifestyle, then it would be super cool to get some data about that, right? So maybe connect a Strava account and see that the person has been running and so on and so forth. Now the challenge here is if that generated data actually really belongs to that person, right? If that app is really connected to the person. So currently the way we're doing it right now is just through emails or through the email, through the email, right? And this is for the regulator, or for a regulatory environment, this is a problem, right? So I think this can catch up with Bank ID. Now, Bank ID, you guys know it probably better than I do. Currently, more the focus is now kind of authentication, maybe signing some documents. I've seen various use cases, but what I think it can bring to AI is a level of trust, a sort of like another level of authorization, right? Where it can kind of confirm that this data is legit for this sort of user, right? So there could be a potential that we can start using different data points and use that data for credit scoring, use that data for better understanding the customer and providing a better experience, right? So this is something which I think can be very interesting. We'll see how that unfolds, right? Next one, which next topic, which I think is very very popular and quite trending, is fraud prevention, and AI is quite heavily linked to helping this problematic. And there are different areas where this can be done. I mean, it can be done on the trading platforms. It can be done, in retail banking. It can be done. There are cases where when you process invoices, people try to falsificate invoices. So AI is helping there to understand if to do sort of like forensics. One example which I've chosen is actually a Czech company, right? So I like to also promote the homeland. Fretmark is a company actually here from Brno. They're one of the companies, I think last year they won the AI awards in the Czech Republic. So I'm not sure, probably you might have heard them. But what they do is kind of, they look after fraud detection in terms of, let's say, account takeover, right? So when your, let's say, credentials have been compromised and someone is trying to somehow overtake your account, they have a mechanism where they, from the web page, try to understand based on the different behavioral characteristics of that user to see if the pattern is not becoming anomalous, right? So what they do is they track the mouse activity, they track the keyboard activity, they look at your flow, your session flow, to see how quick it is, how differentiated it is, and their models then provide, let's say, an alert or a recommendation on whether this is an anomalous event or not, right? So when someone takes over your account, it's usually like a different pattern to the usage, right? And it can raise a flag. Usually, when I talk to Marek Tresner, who's the CEO, he said the usual use case is that someone is in their internet banking and they forget to log off, maybe even in a public place, right? And they can kind of detect when that happens. So there's a lot of inactivity, which is simple to detect. And when the user comes back, they look at the behavioral patterns, and if they're deviated, then they automatically log off the session. So this is kind of the simplest use case. So this is fraud prevention, but we're discussing in terms of Gauss a lot of stuff around anomaly detection in terms of understanding if transactions maybe are different than they used to be, and so on, right? So it's a very strong topic. And this is kind of the newest topic, which was, let's say, kind of accelerated due to the COVID. We've been talking to two of our customers around, let's say, well, they're calling it HR analytics, but I'm kind of renaming it to people and process analytics. And as people now are not always in the office, they want to the process teams, or I don't know what you would want to call them, the quality teams. They want to better understand, how this is affecting them as a company, and what does this mean for them in the future, right? So one thing that we're analyzing with them and we're talking to them is graph analytics. So I'm not sure if you heard about graph analysis before. Typically, we've not done this in the past in the financial space. We've done this more in telco, and this is just to show that when I was talking about models and APIs. So this is something that we're actually taking out of the telecommunications area, and we're putting it into the financial space, right? Or it doesn't even have to apply just to finances. It can be more or less, let's say, any corporate at the end of the day. But in the telecommunication space, what we did is we analyzed voice and SMS interactions between two entities, and you created basically a graph network of these interactions, right? You put weights there, so and the algorithms we use are kind of very similar to how Google kind of in the earlier days ranked their pages, right? So we're not specifically using the PageRank algorithm. We're using an algorithm which is called label propagation, but it's a similar problem. And out of that, you create these basically networks, right? So as you can see on this picture, right? So they have different shapes and characteristics, right? And in the mobile network, what we did there is we kind of identified communities, right? And these communities could be households, they can be workplaces, but we also found out that they can be call centers, right? So a typical call center would probably maybe look like something like this, right? So it's like a star which has one node in the middle, and you can see so many basically connections basically going out, right? So now in the HR analytics, it's kind of answering questions, which people kind of work together, how much do they work together, is their work important, and mapping that onto business problems, right? So if two business units are working on a business problem which is generating a large revenue, as a business leader, what you want to do is you want to make sure that there are no, let's say, barriers between the communication of these sides. And as you can imagine, now people are moving all to, let's say, home offices, and maybe that will continue in the near future. Then you want to make sure that this is still working effectively, right? So this is kind of a good way when you do graph analytics to do this. Now, the challenge with graph analytics, just to say from a technical perspective, is that it's really compute intensive. It needs a lot of compute power, so we do this on distributed clusters, right? And the challenge kind of with the implementation here is sometimes when the fintechs or the banks or the insurance companies or any other corporates would want to do this in-house, you need to look at really cloud native distributed technology which is capable of processing this really quickly, right? So it's a lot of compute power behind this, which is needed, right? So continuing on this narrative, we also worked with a smaller company in terms of analyzing processes and analytics, and basically this company is trying to match good offers or good jobs with people who actually have the relevant skills and the relevant characteristics to do that job, right? So a thing that we do here in Gauss Algorithmic is that we've done for a couple of cases matchmaking engines, right? Technically, what matchmaking engines are is, if I would say very simply, it's maybe really glorious playing with probability and matrices, right, as a mathematical thing. I just wanted to give you an example of one of those, right? So this is, looking at similarity, right? The challenge with the classical matchmaking engines is that they were mostly based on keywords, right? So you can match a specific set of keywords to a specific set of keywords, and you would understand, where the intersections of those two keyword sets are, right? But the world is a lot more complicated than that. In this kind of very quick example, and as you're all programmers, you know that JavaScript and Java are not the same things, right? So even they have parts of the keyword the same, right? And JavaScript is maybe more relevant to a CSS, right, than it is to Java, right? Again, there can be. I don't want to go too maybe deep into discussions, right? Because I don't want to create an argument. Anyone who would define that, but it's kind of just to show a simple example of where that problem could be. To do that efficiently, you have to create an algorithm which kind of understands that, right? So we're doing matchmaking based on context, based on family groups, so it's a lot of playing around with matrices, and this provides basically a connection so that when you see two relevant, when you see a relevant person with a relevant offer, you want to make sure it matches as close as possible, right? And maybe I'm going to show you, once I go through the presentation, maybe a short demo of that, so that you maybe have a better context of that, right? So it's a really interesting use case. Now, so these are some areas which we see trending in terms of the combination of basically fintech and AI. The real question is how. Or it's a big problem, not really to find the problems, but an even bigger problem of what we see is actually getting that project into real life, right? So, at the end of the day, it's really about, bringing experience and value, right? So it solves a problem for someone, and it solves it, with the right sort of experience, right? So solving the problem is the value. But also equally important is actually doing that. Today you have to do that with style, I believe, right? So a lot of people can solve problems, and you have to do it. You have to do it in the right way, and this is really what we try to focus on. So I want to bring you guys into our process a bit, right? So give you a bit of a deep dive on how we solve a specific problem, and we always try to also improve our process, right? So it's not always been the fact that we've been like very efficient, right? So from each project there's a lesson learned. From each project we've seen ways we can do things better, and I'm showing this specific case because we changed something quite rapidly. Not many companies like us actually have a customer experience person on their teams, right? The reason for this is that in the past we saw certain projects where the technology was great, it did its thing, but we couldn't, let's say, internally like sell it very well to the customers, right? Or very well to the end users, right? even with cooperation. So this was particularly at the mobile operator, right? So you can imagine there's a big data team there. They're enthusiastic. They're doing great things, and but someone needs to be the stakeholder of whatever they create, right? So bringing the technology to the customers and to their customers is really important. So we did a bit of change approach, right? So we had contact from this company called the Merim Group, together with Burger King in France, right? Everyone knows Burger King, but not too many people know the Merim Group. The Merim Group is, let's say, the exclusive supplier of ordering systems for Burger King, right? So all the cashiers, all the monitors which you see in the Burger King, where you have the orders, even in the kitchens, the monitors, they call them the bumbars, right? So when you finish your burger, even the hardware which you say, okay, my burger is finished, and you press a button, right? All that equipment, even the kiosks, where you can order stuff, is provided by the Merim Group for Burger King exclusively. They also do McDonald's, but not exclusively. But Burger King is an exclusive customer. Now, the CEO wanted to provide, let's say, a form of an analytical service to the customers, because he was hearing that they were kind of blind on what they do. For each restaurant, they only have, let's say, PDF reports which come once a day. So he wanted to provide, let's say, a new service which he would be able to monetize against Burger King, and Burger King, came to them with this request to get more insight on what's happening in the restaurant. So the request to us was, hey, I need a dashboard, right? Which is okay. Yeah, we kind of do that. Why? All right. So what we started to do is we started to work with them. Eventually, the end result is a mobile application, right? And you might, want to understand why we ended up with a mobile application, right? And not a dashboard, right? So, and this is thanks basically to that change in the process that we did, right? So, but before we jump into the details, just to show you a bit of the impact, right, which we put there, right? So now the application is connected, and it's a web application, right? So it's not a native mobile application, but we may be going there in the future. But we're now connected to 330 Burger Kings, right? So these are actually restaurants which are sending data into AWS. We have Kubernetes, am I saying it correctly? Always, Kubernetes cluster, which actually has the components like Kafka's, Apache Spark. We're using a database called ClickHouse, and it's actually collecting all of that data from those endpoints via VPN to these central storages, and we're processing that data with 5-minute latency, and this is then provided to a customer. So right now they have been testing the free version of the application, but already some customers now are having a premium version, where the premium version just has more, let's say, widgets and insights and and stuff like that, right? And that's currently being tested and rolled out. So and we're getting good feedback. So for Merim, as we're currently looking at the pricing and the business model, right, this can be a very, very nice revenue stream for them. So how did we get there? So basically, the highlights of the project, it actually took us basically 3 months to actually get where we are now, right? So actually 3 months from the point where we started data collection to actually having, well, we're still calling it an MVP, but I think, as we see the customers using it, right, it looks very interesting. I think they're considering it as a production app, but it took us 3 months to get there. And the process was that, we flew to France. I got a CX expert on the team. We did interviews with the customers. We did interviews with, the Burger King staff. We actually went for a full day into the restaurants, right? So we were, dressed up and everything, right, just to see what's happening in the everyday life of that restaurant, right? And we showed them. We already had prepared, as we already touched the data, a demo dashboard, and we showed that to them basically after that day, and we got also feedback on that, let's say, initial let's say prototype that we did for them, right? And you can see this prototype down here. So we did it very simply. We took a tool, we took Grafana, and we showed them, hey, if you have a tool as a Grafana, you can do this sort of thing, right? And then we talked to them of what the individual metrics mean and how it relates to their business. But there were a couple of things that came out of this research that we did, is that when we were in the restaurant, we actually saw that no one had time to actually look at dashboards, right? Everyone was, had to be really focused, really busy. They were a very organized unit, right? And the people who were actually interested in the metrics are running around the restaurant all day. So it's the restaurant manager, and he has to go into the drive-through to deal with problems. He's dealing problems, in the actual places where the tables are. He's, fixing kiosks. He's, flushing a toilet or whatever. So what he actually needed is a way to get to those insights from something which is available to him quite quickly. So we saw that he had a mobile in his pocket. We went with the mobile experience. We talk about him. Hey, if we do a mobile experience, what are the key elements there? How does that help you with your business, and so on? So we went from this actually demo dashboard, this prototype, to this first version of the application, and we're continuously talking to them. So apart from this, we also saw that the people who worked in the kitchen, when they had breaks, they passed a certain section of the restaurant, let's say more than 5 times a day. So they have a rest place, and when they go to the rest place, they pass a corridor. So a good thing about Burger King restaurants is that 95% of the restaurants have the same style, have the same setup, right? So what they're doing now is they're actually installing a wall version on that basically corridor before they're entering the restroom, so they can see basically their performance for that day, right? So this is what we've delivered, and this is where we went through the process with them. Right now we're in this, let's say, last phase. So we're collecting the feedback and we're creating a kind of new roadmap for that, right? Now for you guys, this can be obvious, right? This is what you can say to me, hey Johnny, this is everyone needs to do that, right? We do that anyway, right? But for data teams, this really wasn't very common, and even customers weren't expecting us to help them go through this process, right? So this is currently what we're trying to adapt in most of our projects, right? So this sort of like design thinking and user experience research we're trying to implement even to our existing customers and to other processes, right? So just kind of this is our process, and to finish up, I wanted to show some statements from our customers, right? So kind of to show that this does help, and when you go through a structured process with the customer, especially in AI, because for a lot of people it's really hard to understand, then you get then a lot better feedback, right? So this is Martin Hudak, he's saying that he had 100% confidence on what we were doing, and the reason behind this, I would say, is that he understood what we were doing, right? Julian Borrell, he's the CTO of the Marine Group, right? So they were super happy that we really helped them migrate first to the AWS situation, right? We saw, and again, it comes to that infrastructure part that we do. And, without good infrastructure, without, the data cleaned up, it's really difficult to start an AI project, right? And Peter is a data scientist from Slovak Telecom, right? You don't need to read that through, but he's just saying that kind of you have to be also very flexible in these things, right? So especially in these type of projects, I mean, a lot of things can go wrong, right? So you can in the beginning of a lot of our customers ask us in the beginning, can you achieve a certain goal? Like, can you bring me 30% more customers, with this model, and I always say no. The reason is that this is it's hard to predict this world, right? So if you've not seen the data, then you have to adapt yourself during the project, right? So once the project is processing, your confidence of the result grows, right? So, but at the beginning, I understand their frustration when we say, hey, it's not certain and so on, right? But what we can guarantee is this structure works somehow, right? So more important in the beginning than the results is the actual process, and the process gives the customers confidence. So that's it from me. One last thank you especially goes, to my team, right? These are some of the faces, right, which we have here right now. It would be great if we can, for probably better future cooperation, meet one day. Hopefully, COVID. Well, it's going to be here with us from some time, but hopefully there would be an opportunity to see each other, right? And maybe get into some more detailed technical discussions. Yeah, and let's talk. So let's. I'm ready for your questions. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I tried to keep it in a certain area. So feel free to ask anything, or let's maybe open a discussion on a topic that you would like to understand a bit more.